Hey mama, do you find yourself wishing you knew you were on the right path with your business? Or wanting to know how to do it all as a work-at-home mom and entrepreneur? If you struggle with imposter syndrome, mom guilt, or fear of failure, then you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Alexia, a Christian mindset coach passionate about teaching moms how to renew their minds to find success both in business and motherhood. You can overcome the negative thoughts holding you back from fully stepping into your calling. I know what it's like to worry your business will never work, to feel mom guilt every time you work on your business, to realize your mindset is hindering you, but not knowing how to change it in a Christ-centered way. I created the Mama with a Calling podcast to teach you how to use the powerful combination of God's Word and proven mindset strategies to help you break free from negative, paralyzing thoughts and gain clarity and confidence to go where God is leading you. As you step out of the old way of thinking and into God's way, you'll find more peace, joy, and purpose. Pop in those earbuds and get ready to let God work in you so he can work through you. All right, welcome to another episode of the Mama with a Calling podcast. Today, I'm talking with Carol Gutierrez. Carol is the founder of the Evidence Board with a background in coaching and a deep belief in the power of purpose. Carol is a dedicated advocate for personal transformation and self-discovery, committed to helping individuals unlock the clues of their unique life story. She sees life as a grand detective's journey where each experience leaves behind clues for us to go back and find, each clue offering insights into who we are and who we're destined to become. Carol is dedicated to helping individuals rediscover their true essence by piecing together the threads of their experiences and making connections to reveal their unique life map, which she calls the Evidence Board, which we're going to be talking about today. Beyond her work with the Evidence Board, Carol conducts workshops using inner healing art therapy, forgiveness practices, and empowerment strategies tailored to individual personalities. Thanks for being here on the show, Carol.
I'm so happy to be here, Alexia. It's my honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So to get us started, can you tell us a little bit more about your story and how you came to create what you call the Evidence Board?
Yes, of course. Well, 3 years ago, well, first of all, I come from a background of marketing. I worked as a multicultural director for about 11 years. And during the pandemic, I lost my job. And so my role was eliminated. I knew it was coming because I had told the Lord, I'm not going to leave unless I'm pushed out. I was very comfortable making good money. And so I remember I asked on December 31st, 2019, what is the year of 2020? And I felt in my spirit the year of change. And I was like, oh, I know this has to do with my job. I was like, okay, God, I'm ready, but I'm not ready. So when I was sad, but I was also like, I knew that it was him saying, okay, you're out then. This is how it has to be. And so I took a class, which you were a part of as well, for us to kind of find what we were doing, that we were made to do this, do something with our life. And as I started sort of evaluating, what do I want to do? What have I been doing for my whole life? What are the things I love? I kind of stumbled upon, I've always been coaching people and life coaching, but I've never really called it that. And so during that class, there was, I don't know, these classes, they stir you up and things come up and you have to deal with a lot of stuff. And in a dark moment, I know that I was depressed. And I was like, well, what now? I have 2 little kids. I'm almost 40. Where do I start over? And so I got a poster board and I started putting sticky notes on it and I started mapping, okay, what do people come to me for? I started going through all these questions that I had asked myself. I pulled out old journals when I was 6th grade, 7th grade, 10th grade, and all of these sort of questions started coming out in these journals that I had already been asking myself. And as I started asking myself, it showed me like, okay, coaching, like this is what you've been doing. I'm going to show you my board. My first board. And so during the class, you remember this, Alexia, we were in the class and I was like, well, I've discovered, I interrupted the class. First of all, I was like, I need to say something. I unmuted myself and yeah, it was my birthday. So I was like, you know what? Sometimes, I'm too desperate to be denied. And so I held up this board and I was like, this is the evidence that I'm supposed to be, a life coach. And that's what I'm going to offer, because he had to offer something at the end, like something that people could pay you $1, $3 for. And I remember in the chat, in the big chat of 500 people, everybody was like, well, what's the evidence board? What is that? We want you to teach on that. And I was like, no, this is not, I don't know what this is. This was just like my process of darkness, of
Mm-hmm.
like, this was just me like mind mapping my life. And so, the groups that I was in, they kept saying, Carol, the life coaching thing is really good, but can you please do a workshop on the evidence board? And I said, okay, I'll do a workshop on the evidence board. And so I did a workshop on the evidence board. You were there. And it felt uh, electric. It felt amazing. I think it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours. It wasn't enough time. I mean, I was rushing through, trying to get through 60 something questions, and everybody had their poster boards and was writing. And I remember I felt like, oh my God, this was amazing. And the next day, I remember I was, kind of like getting ready the next day, and I felt really deep in my spirit a voice. It was my own voice, but very calm. And it said, you need to trademark this. You need to buy a domain. This is going to be, is going to help a lot of people. And I was like, what? I don't even know, like, what, how to trademark what. That day I sat down, I bought a domain, theevidenceboard.com. I applied for a trademark. It took a year. But I didn't know what I
Process. Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it took a year. I don't really know what I was doing. And, you know, you and I had a conversation about it, and then I kind of froze. And I sat on it for a year, and I didn't do anything with it. Until a year and a half ago, where I had gotten a couple of sort of prophetic words and people saying, God, you're waiting on God. God is waiting on you. He's giving you something that
Oh.
you need to,
Mm-hmm.
people that I didn't really know. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but you have to do something that it needs to happen. It needs to happen, it has to come out. And man, that was so hard. And I felt like an imposter. I was like, I tried all these other different things of making money. Well, I need to make money. I remodeled houses. I did decluttering. I did all these things. And it was sort of like running away a little bit from this. Um, and then there was a moment where it was like, okay, what are you going to choose? You can't do like piecemeal this and a little bit of that. And so that's when I said, okay, I need to focus on this and maybe put the other stuff aside, which was very scary. Um, and I wrote the book, and it took me about a year and a half to write the book and the workbook. And here we are. This is the beginning of something, because the book is
Yeah.
just the beginning of something. It's really not the end, but it was the first step. The first step.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing the vulnerability in the story and the part
Mm,
where I don't know about anybody else, I'm sure they do, but I just love stories like that where it's
mm.
like I did this one thing and it's sort of like an accident. I mean, it's an
It was
accident that
an
you
accident.
stumble upon it, right? But it's not an
Yeah.
accident to become a business
Mm-hmm.
or to become something,
Mm-hmm.
to become like this movement, I don't know. But
Yes.
it is kind of like you said, and I remember when you did that, you unpaused and you got on this, because it was like there's like 500 people of us in this program, and so
Yeah.
to be seen and heard was hard. But
Yeah,
you're
you
like,
had to get
wait
picked.
a minute, wait a minute, like, yeah, you're like, I am going to speak up, and she gave you the floor for a second, and it was just, but I remember seeing it, I was like, that is so cool, because it just embodied what we were all trying to do, which is figure out
Mm,
what are we meant to do. And the
mm.
workshop, if I remember, had a bunch of people in there
Yeah.
too. And it was like, so I just think that, that excitement though, and then you ran into this wall.
Mm.
And I don't know if you want to go there, but can we,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, like,
Sure.
I feel like the wall, because I feel like this happens a lot where we get excited from something. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, admittedly, when for me, this is the case when I'm
Yeah.
in a group setting, and this is why it's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful to be a part of a program, group coaching,
Yes.
something, or if you take a course with other people that have this group mentality, because when you see what other people are doing, you're motivated to keep going, you're encouraged and
Absolutely.
inspired by what they're doing. When you're doing it by ourselves, it's so easy to be like, because most of us in our real world, people aren't doing crazy things online, they're just living normal life. And so
Yes.
they're not doing anything that feels so big and different. So
Yes.
it can happen that you kind of you go, and then it's like all these barriers, all these walls. So that's what, I mean, that's where I like to focus. So can we talk about what were some of those blocks that hit you like that? And maybe you didn't know at the time, but looking back, even what was really stopping you from going? Because it sounded like it was going great.
Listen, I think to everybody was like, this was great. What's the deal? You already have everything it takes. We know you have potential. This was already, I already had, what is that? Like a proven, what do you call that? Like proof of concept, sort of. Right. So I had a proof
Right.
of concept, which is really like the hard part of these things. It's like, are people going to care about this? I had that. But I think that there was a couple of things. So I think one of the biggest things was I had some shame of imposter like who am I to do a movement when I'm depressed and I'm feeling
Mm.
lost, and what can I speak into other people when I wake up feeling defeated a lot in the morning? Like the first thought in my mind is, you know, a negative thought. And so I have to battle that on a daily basis. And then so I kind of went in like a funk, if you will, where it was just negative, negative. And then for a while, I started, because I thought like I'm a Christian. I should already wake up, with gratefulness, and I have all these things that God has for me, and I'm the head and not the tail, and I'm above and not below, all these things. And I felt bad that it didn't sort of come naturally. And so then I started doubting, did you really speak this, God? Was this really something that you said that I should do? Or was this just in the excitement of the group thing? Because yes, after the group where it's an incubation period where everybody's excited, there comes like a loneliness where you
Mm-hmm.
feel very alone and very like, did I really? It's like when you go to a retreat and it's like awesome, and then you come home and you get like depressed a little bit. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whoa. Well, that scientifically, that's like a whole thing that they talk about, where it's like, the high of the moment, and then you come home and then there's like a lull moment. That's what happens after people get married. Sometimes
Yeah.
after you have a baby, you're
Yeah.
like, I wanted this, and then the baby's here, and you're like, oh my God. What?
Reality. Yeah.
Reality hits, so maybe it doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
sleep. Or like you get
Mm-hmm.
married and then you get home and you have to like wash dishes and like do
Mm-hmm.
laundry, and you're like, ooh, this isn't sexy, this isn't cute, and this is not the fantasy that I had. And so I think, you know sometimes what I realized, Alexia, is that I could not be alone with my own thoughts. I could not be trusted to be alone. What do I mean? I started saying, okay, uh clearly it's not going to come to me in the morning when I wake up, this happy thought about I have to do this, I have to do that, I'm amazing, I have to persevere. Nobody's coming to bring me out and do this. So I have to be very intentional about what I listen to, about what I allow in my mind, and I cannot be trusted to be alone. I cannot afford to have any thought about myself that God doesn't have about myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started doing a couple of things. So I started listening to um like podcasts, like it's like sermons, like preaching, Steve Furtick. I
Mm-hmm.
started listening. I found Oprah Super Soul Sunday, and it was amazing because here's this woman that's talking about all these great big things, dreaming
Mm-hmm.
big, purpose, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything I did, Alexia, like I would wake up in the morning and as I'm folding because here's the thing, as a mom sometimes, because I'm sort of at home, but also trying to figure this out, picking up my kids, there's a lot of the mundane stuff. And you're like, okay, I'm writing a book, but here I am scrubbing a toilet,
Yeah.
doing
Right.
laundry,
Right.
very mundane things. And so it's very easily to slip and slide into this depression, say, I don't see the grandness of this. Nobody's calling me. Nobody's asking me to speak. And so I had to, as I was folding laundry, I'm like listening up. I'm like, yes, I am this. And so then I would another one and another one and another one. And I stopped having, for a season, like phone conversations that wouldn't really lead to anything. It just, I was like, I need to be in a little incubator and just no Netflix, no all this stuff that's like I don't know, numbing my brain. I need to lift myself, bombard myself with positive, with uplifting, with God stuff, with people that are doing great big things. I need to be friends with those people that I don't really know yet, but Steve Harvey and Alicia Keys, all these people, and listening to their stories and
Mm-hmm.
the things that they had overcome to get
Mm-hmm.
to where they were, because we see the overnight success, and so we think that everybody is like that. Like, oh, this person
Mm-hmm.
probably didn't have it hard. But to me, one of the most impactful things is listening to these stories of people that have been through hardship, because it reminds me that they're human and that the things that I'm going through, as basic as somebody else is folding laundry that's gonna be doing amazing things for the world and for the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think, what I wrote down was, I was like, well, first of all, I was thinking like spiritual warfare going on.
Oh,
Like the
totally.
enemy totally is like, you're not doing
Yep.
this. You have
Yes.
nothing to offer, right? There's all that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have
Yep.
to understand that that's even what's happening, right? Because sometimes, usually that's how we figure out that that's what that is. I mean,
That's right.
that happened to me too, like this season of just look back at my journals. It was around that time, probably before we did the program, that I was really like, when I look back, I'm like, I was so depressed. Like I was so
Mm.
sad. And it's interesting because I don't know if this happens to everybody, but I've heard it from a few people where they have this, they know there's this calling, like they feel like they know it with everything. Like, I'm so excited, this is the thing. And then they run smack into this wall and it's like down. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
Joseph in the pit or something, is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, and part of that is spiritual warfare, like the enemy's coming at you, and then
Yes.
you're being built up because that preparation, like, not, I mean, sure, it would have been great and like a wonderful story if it like took off and it was all successful
Yeah.
then, but it's even really powerful, I think, when it's not fun. But when we
Yeah.
go through those times of
Mm-hmm.
having to wrestle with our thoughts, like you said, you
Yes.
kind of ran away a little bit and did other
Yeah.
things. People often get, they feel bad, like, I'm like doing all this stuff and I'm not getting any traction. And it's like we're bouncing around from thing to thing because you're afraid of something. And finally, when you get
Yes.
tired of the bounce of running around, you stop and you're like, what am I doing? And
Yeah.
like for you, you had like a prophetic word, which is amazing, right? God's like, hello, like, what are you doing
Hello.
over there?
Yes.
But giving you a chance to like, okay, I'll wait here. I'll wait, and then I'm gonna bring her back.
Yes.
But a lot of times we do that on our own, and we're thinking that that, like you said, like, did God say? But
Mm-hmm.
it's not that God didn't say. And that's
Yeah.
it's such a hard one in today's world, I feel
It
like,
is.
because so often it's hard to put our foundation on believing what God said if we don't know that we
Yeah.
heard God in the first place, like even understanding how to hear God.
Yes.
And so I just think that, that process though is going to prepare you, because let's say it had been successful then, maybe whatever your mindset stuff was, maybe you would have gotten all wrapped up in the success or the money, or like
Mm-hmm.
back into, yes, I'm back at my big salary from whatever. But God, like,
Yes.
not that you can't make the salary, but your mindset
Yes.
around it might be different now. And like
Absolutely.
your dependence on God and getting your thoughts straight in that way to believe that you had something to offer, but also at the same time believing that it's not really you offering it, right? It's God working through you,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not really about you, but it's you, right? God's working through you, like all of that stuff. I just feel like God, like with Joseph in the pit, that's what I always talk about, because Joseph was, he had the dream, but then he gets into slavery, like he's the head of household,
Yes.
but he goes into prison. And then when he goes to be with Pharaoh, he calls it, it says like his year of service to Pharaoh. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say in my position as being second in the land. Like, he doesn't say that. He's like, I am in service to Pharaoh. And I'm like, he had to be humbled, because somebody with that much power, God needs him to be in a place where he is like, God, like, that's who
It's
I'm
only
here
you.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, I'm not here for
Yeah.
me. I'm not so awesome. It's God. And
No.
God, if he's like, I feel like I don't know if this is true, but like the bigger things God wants us to do, and the bit higher places, the more power, not power, authority, the more influence, that's the word,
Yeah.
influence, that he needs our heart to really be prepared to
Yeah.
handle that. I mean, you see
Yeah.
all through the Bible over and over, but like in Kings, I just got done reading First and Second Kings, and I'm like, these kings, like, they just the one after another, just terrible. like decisions. But
Yeah.
it's like when you have and you're in a place of authority like that, like it affects people around you, right? So I just
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I don't know, like to look,
Well,
it's
and
not
the
like
other
I said, it's
thing,
not, go ahead.
yeah, no, and well, the other thing is, I think for me, it also had to be about, I'm not doing this for the money because,
Mhm.
and so, but at first, right, I was like, oh, this could be big, this could,
Yeah.
and then I was like, okay, how do I monetize this? And then that stress of how do I monetize this? What do I start? Where do I go? That, I think that was a lot of the freezing
Mm-hmm.
of, oh God, I don't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not going to start. I think one of the turning points for me was realizing I'm going to do this regardless
Yeah.
because I love it and because I want to help people. Like, what is my why? I want to help people. I want to set people free. And so then the pressure of this thing kind of transferred into, and I said, God, this is your project. I am going to serve you to carry out this project that's yours, which means, God, because I'm like, God, you got to fund this. You got to bring the people. You got to, like, I am going to do step by step, and I'm going to let you worry about the how because I don't know how. I don't know how. And and like you said, it's in that hardness of how difficult things are. Listen, as I was writing the book, I had to learn the program of how to write the book. I lost part of the book several times. The fonts would disappear. I would cry and I'm like, why, God? Why? Like, you know, um, it's just like things would get lost. I would have to watch 20 videos of how to move the little cursor from here to there. And okay, I'm gonna do this and that. And so it just it means so much more to me now because it
Mm-hmm.
was so hard to birth, right? But and I grew so much. I grew so much. I had to go through that because I self-published it. I wrote it. I bought the ISBN. I bought the barcodes. I lost money. I did the right thing, the wrong thing. And so how can I help somebody else that's like, I think I want to write a book, but I don't know how. I tell people, a couple of people have said, I felt like I have a book inside me. Write it, I can help you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and like there's so many things that you learn along the way. Yeah, that's such a great point.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like it's harder to birth. But that's true. That's something that happened to me too. And I just kind of wonder if that's really what's needed for a lot of people is to
Mm-hmm.
because there's an uneasiness that we feel, a lot of us, about sort of going after the monetization and the strategy and the like we
Mm-hmm.
start there and then a lot of people do, they freeze, like you said. It was like trying to focus on the money side of
Mm-hmm.
it. And we can tell ourselves, oh, I'm trying to be a good steward of the business. And that is part of being a steward. But you can feel it that it's coming from the wrong place. It's just not,
Yes.
it's not focused on serving. It's a desperate place a lot of times. Like, I need it
Yes.
to make money like yesterday, and you don't have this freedom. But I did the same thing. I switched. I even have a sticky note over here somewhere where I say, like, this is my mission. Because I noticed that
Mm-hmm.
Jesus and then like Paul, the way they operate is they're like mission minded. So Jesus is like, he's healing people. I think it's in like the first town of Capernaum or something. And he heals Peter's mother-in-law. And then he goes away and he's like, and they're like, hey, everybody's looking for you. And Jesus is like, I gotta go. Like, I got places to be. Like, I'm not just supposed to stay in this one town healing everybody here. And I was like, I mean, he's got an agenda. God's telling him to move and he's going to move. Now he's going to stay sometimes, he, heal this, whatever. But he's got something that's happening. He's on a mission. And at the end, he says, like, the work is done. Like, it is
Mm-hmm.
finished. But he also says another place, like, the work you gave me is done. And
Mm-hmm.
Paul is very like, he is on a mission. He is going to do this thing. But we often don't think about this, or I didn't really pay attention. When Paul gets, the road to Damascus, and then he gets called to go to the Gentiles, there's like a little, like one sentence that says, and he's sent back to Tarshish for 14 years. He just hangs out at home. I mean, I'm assuming that God's working on his heart because he's going from Pharisee to talk to Gentiles. He's got some heart work to do. And he feel like the depression that he probably felt from, like, killing the Christians and making them martyrs. Because when Barnabas sees that, and I'm saying this because this story stands out to me, because when Barnabas goes to
Yeah.
Antioch and sees that the people there are Christians because God used what Paul did for good. That's why it spread. They ran
Yes.
away and they went out. And so he goes and gets Paul and brings him to Antioch and says, look, like you didn't ruin it. Like, so
Mm,
I just love the how like
love that.
sometimes we have to go into these this place of realizing like if I never made a dime from it, would I
Mm-hmm.
do what God's asking me to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because like sure, if he's calling you to business, he means you to make money, but would you spend the time, put in the hours, create the podcast, write the book if he said, I just need you to do this, I want you to work over here making money some other way, or your husband's going to provide or something, but
Yeah.
it's not going to make money, would you? And I feel like we have to be in a place where we're willing to, it doesn't mean he's asking us to, but we're willing to,
Right.
so that when it becomes a mission like that, we care
Mm-hmm.
more about the people we're serving than the way we look, the way we sound. We don't know if it's a good offer, we're going to try because we're trying to help them, and we just want to make sure that that it's available to them. So I just
Yeah,
think
we
that
just want to set
mission,
people
yeah,
free.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the evidence board, so
Mhm.
can you, I know you explained like how it came about, but
Yes.
what exactly is it, so people are like, what is this thing that she's
What
talking
is
about?
this thing? Right. So I'm still working on my elevator pitch, to be honest, and like kind of like
Yeah.
funneling it down. But basically, the best way that I can describe it is that it is, the evidence boards that we're used to seeing are about detectives looking for crime, right? And so they have pictures and they're tying events to themes, to
Mm-hmm.
things. And so I've sort of flipped that around to be a positive thing, that we are the detectives of our life and that nothing in our story is wasted or lost, that everything that we have lived from childhood, and beyond has something to do with who we are called to be, what we are called to steward, what our contribution is to the world. And purpose can come from trauma, purpose can come from all kinds of things. And so the evidence board is a methodology, if I it's the best sort of way to describe it, where you can sort of, you're kind of mapping out your life. I one of the things that I'm a life hacker. Like I like to make things that are difficult easy. And so this is a life map hack, if you will, where, in reality I have a digital board that I've made for people on Etsy. And so figuring that out, but then putting it in the book, there's over 250 questions. And we go through different chapters. We go through childhood, adulthood. There's a whole chapter on personality traits, enneagrams, soft skills, hard skills, core values. It's really a coming home to ourselves and getting to know ourselves and mapping out who am I and what can I offer to the world. We all have something that we can offer to the world. Not one thing, could be a whole bunch of things, could be different things in different seasons. And so it's sort of bringing that up and validating who you are, and that you're not just floating in life without, a north, but sometimes we are. And so we need to map ourselves out to say, okay, wait a minute, let me pull these things together. What are these recurring themes in my life? What about my childhood spoke to who I am? Sometimes we lose our way. And so it's almost like we're following the breadcrumbs back to ourselves. Just like, so, all these questions that I had asked myself, this sort of came as a surprise and an accident, but it wasn't an accident because I had been asking myself this for 20 years. I have here, this is my first evidence. And I just
Oh,
ripped out pieces of my journal, of
yeah.
all my journals. And these are all questions that all of this I wrote in 2016. It's half of the questions. It was just me in like a hunger for who is this person? What do I do? What about it was all here. And so even this is part of my evidence, all these things. And
Mm.
way that I had seen it was, I don't know who I am. I feel like I was supposed to do something and I missed it. I missed my moment. I missed my time. And it was really got all of this was part of that. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but it's sort of this map of you. And then I ask, other questions like, where do you steer conversations? What lights you up? What energizes you? What drains you?
Mhm.
Um, what if I went to your house? What are your books? What are they about? And so all these things we kind of know about ourselves, but sometimes everybody sees things in us and we don't see those things in ourselves. If you need to help somebody, how do you help somebody? Do you
Mhm.
offer to cook? Do you offer to pack? Do you offer to plan the I'm not a chef, so I cook well, but I don't like it. So the way that I offer to help is I'll organize, I'll declutter, I bring order to
Mm.
things. And so all of that is sort of the breadcrumb. And so I'm helping to bring that up because a lot of times we think our purpose is out there. It's over there. I need to go
Mhm.
find my purpose. It's out there. Nope. It's already in here and we need to bring it up. We need to bring it up. So that is, it's prompting people, helping people. And I'll be super honest with you, Alexia. I think that a lot of people, buy the book and they just put it on their nightstand and they're like, this didn't really work for me. I don't know where my purpose is. And they never opened it. So I think that we have to be honest with ourselves also to say, okay, am I somebody that needs to be walked through this? And so I will be helping with coaching. I'm doing, like I said, workshops, all this kind of stuff. But we have to put in the work to go
Mhm.
in deep within ourselves in order to ask ourselves some of these questions. And some of them are hard questions. And maybe we don't want to go there. But even if somebody has, a therapist or a Christian counselor or somebody, they can go through these things with that person that can help guide them to the other side.
I didn't even realize it was called an evidence for that reason, but I love that that it was like, sort of like a crime map, or like it's all
A
things kind
crime
of
map.
point to the same thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I just even I don't know if I mean I'm sure this happens to other people, but when I hear about it, I just get so excited because that's me too. That I've
Mm-hmm.
always from a young age was like, what is my purpose? What am
Mm-hmm.
I gonna do? What is the thing that's gonna be like? And for me, I don't know why it was like I wanted to discover something or do something that was like have a different way of seeing. Like I always wanted to discover a fossil. Like I remember being
Mm-hmm.
like a little girl, like walking around my fossil guide, and I'm like, I'm gonna find there's a dinosaur under us and nobody's found it, but I'm gonna be the one. And
I
so, like,
love
I
it.
went on to be a scientist thinking that I wanted to discover, ask questions and discover things. But really what's so neat is like there's like all these pieces that kind of came together. And I can see all bits of that all in what I'm doing now, like helping others discover who they are, what they're called to do. But I discover like more about like when I'm reading the Bible, just like discovering and have an understanding. Like that's a gift from God. That is not from me. I was not good at that. But what I love about it is that when you go through something like that, like it's just such a great way to, like you said, you might feel like you're missing something because this even
Mm,
comes into play, for my audience talking about businesses, because there are
yeah.
5 million ways to make money online. And if you just go after the first shiny one you see,
Mm,
it's either going to cause you to like not be successful because you don't need to be there, or you're going to waste a bunch of money doing it
mm.
and then hating it. You've created now your
Yep.
own prison for yourself.
Yep.
Or you're going to bounce to the next thing, to the next thing, to like you're just going to keep doing that. And it's like that's literally the not the evidence board obviously, but the program I just released, because I'm like, pause, let's ask
Yes.
ourselves, what
Yes.
are you supposed to do? Because a lot of times there's the mindset piece on top of it, which, because some of, like you said, so looking at our childhood is so important too, in a positive way, because we lost our way along the way, because it could be
Hmm.
influences, it could be trauma, it could be, caring what people think about us, or getting really caught
Hmm.
up in the career ladder. Like we kind of turn around and we're like,
Yes.
this career, how did I get here? And then you're going, what am I doing? So I love that it does that, because if you can, even no matter where, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, I would say to do the evidence board and to just figure
Yeah.
out who has God made me to be.
Hmm.
Because it's not just an accident, all the things that have happened, and God will use everything for good.
Everything.
He can use them for something. And
Yes.
so being able to do that is just going to help you have the confidence, like knowing those things and seeing it like right in front of you like that. If you do the work, like
Seeing it.
have a, yeah,
Yeah.
seeing it
Yeah.
is like, okay, I see a bunch of things that are the same. And it
Yes.
starts to feel like so empowering, I guess, and just affirming that it's okay. I say this a lot on the podcast because I have to say this to myself.
Hmm.
Like we you need to be yourself. Like God is counting on you to be you. Because like I think
Yeah.
about Moses in the burning bush. Like I always say this example because Moses saw the burning bush and he didn't run away. He was curious enough to go over. So God
Mm.
knew that he was going to question and be like, now why is that bush not burning? I need to go check it out. Like that was Moses's personality. Somebody else may have been like,
Yes,
"Blah," or they might not even notice the bush because they're oblivious and looking over here. But like God knew that Moses was going to notice and that he was going to ask questions and go over out of curiosity. And I'm like, God's counting on us to be us because we're
that's
not just
right.
supposed to be pawns. Like I think sometimes in
No,
Christian culture, I guess, or in the church, a lot of times it's like you need to completely like whatever you like, whatever you want, whatever you think you want to do, like that can't be the same as what God wants for you. And it's
mm,
almost like you're asked to deny yourself in a way that's like don't be yourself at all
don't be
in order to
you.
find your
Right.
calling. Yeah. And it's like, but God
Yeah,
made you that way. So you're
that's
not even
right.
honoring what God created in the first place.
That's right. Well, even, one of the things it's so interesting that you say about like Moses, the personality, a lot of the things that maybe we got in trouble with when we were little. For me, for example, it was great student talks too much.
Yeah.
I was a motor mouth. My teacher would throw staplers at, and she'd be like, "Motor mouth, be quiet," and I remember, it was like this negative thing, but I was a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have two little kids and one, they both talk a lot, but one of them is like constantly getting in trouble because he talks a lot. And so I try to think about, okay, how do I foster this in a way that's like positive? Say, I love that you talk. This is part of
Mm-hmm.
your gifting. You are a communicator. Now, you can talk all the time during class, but I
Yeah.
don't want to kill that in him.
Yeah.
And so that's why going back to our childhood and looking at, like you said, in a positive way, the things that we were good at that I love what you said about being a paleontologist. I was thinking even before our call, which is super strange but not strange because God is, I was thinking, if people ask me like what are the things that you love, I love like dinosaurs. I love that area, that time, that era, the fossils, that sort of that discovering of things. And it's not that maybe you were always meant to be, it's how do you look at it, right? It may not be you were meant to discover a quote unquote fossil, but maybe it's you're discovering the fossils of people's lives, what's been laid down and dead. And you're like, let's get it. Let's go in and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Mm-hmm.
go in deep and bring it up to surface and let's rebuild who you are with these pieces of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, to me, it's even more powerful because you can change so many people's lives. And a lot of times we think like, oh, if I wanted to be a policeman or a firefighter and I didn't get to do that, and now I'm 45 or 50. And no, what was it about that? What was
Yeah.
it about that? I want to rescue people. I want people to feel loved, to feel protected, safe. Okay, how does that look like now? And so even, in the evidence board, it's not just okay, we're going to find your purpose. It could be validating what you're already doing, that we need an additional validation of am I going down the right path, God? In this journey, Alexia, I've asked myself, even though I know God is behind it, I still have doubts where I'm like, okay, are you still with me, God? And so I'll do a step and then it lights up like a little thing opens, a door opens. I'm like, okay, not a huge door down the road. It's like right in front of me. So I'm like, okay, you said yes to this. I'm gonna go again. And so it's hard, it's scary because we don't really know what's the next thing. But even you calling me, I and telling me, hey, I have that written down somewhere here. I have it written down. I have here, people will come to help me with the evidence board. And so I have declarations and people will pay me to speak
Mm-hmm.
and do
Yeah.
workshops. And the evidence board is, and people will call me and people will come alongside me to help me push this along because I don't have all the context. And a few days later, I get, your email. I get a lady that's like, hey, I would like to know what the workshop of the evidence board is. Can you do a workshop for 15 ladies? I have this kind of money to pay. And I'm like, what? That is the little yeses from God
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, who we are. And also God saying, I made you this way. I used to go into places and I used to say, this could be better, this could be better. And then I used to say, I have a critical spirit. No, it wasn't that I had a critical spirit. It's that I'm a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to change the mindset of how can I want to improve things. I'm an improver. And so that's even that way, it humbles my heart to say, okay, how can I improve this? What can I offer here instead of complaining? How can I make this better? And so those things, start from our childhood, and the things in our personality that might be our biggest challenge might be very directly related to our purpose and our calling.
Yes. I did a podcast episode on that actually. It was around Moses. Same thing where I
Yeah.
said the thing that got you in trouble is
Mm.
the very thing that ends up being the gift, because Moses,
Mm.
he's sitting there trying to do justice, with the in Egypt, and it gets him, he becomes a refugee because of that. Like, he ran away, he's a, what's the word, convict, and he's on the run. And I was like, but he ends up being the person that God gives the law to. So it's like his desire for justice wasn't wrong, it just was misplaced. He did it in
Yeah.
his own way, he kind of acted out, but it wasn't that it wasn't meant to be used, that was given by God. And I just think
Yeah.
it's really powerful to think about those things. And as
Yeah.
you were talking, I was just thinking, there's some of it that is us, I mean, sure, but I also just think the enemy has no problem. In fact, he's like from the beginning trying to just, like you said, even taking that critical, like, you have a critical spirit, or you talk
Yeah.
too much, or like
Yeah.
taking these things and just wearing you down. Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he knows God makes us for something. Like, God made us, so we're not, God doesn't make things on accident, he doesn't make things
No.
that are purposeless. He
Mm-hmm.
creates beauty, and he creates, like, everything goes together, and there's wisdom in what he's creating. And so the enemy from the beginning is trying to just like beat us down, and we
Yeah.
have to, when normally it feels like when we get into our 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s, we're going, wait a second, like
Mm.
these things about myself, I mean, Moses was 40, but like the things about myself that I've been kind of like masking or trying to like hide because they weren't really accepted. Like, I talk a lot, I'm actually very introverted, but I talk a lot, and I
Mm-hmm.
ask a ton of questions. And yes, I went into the sciences, but that wasn't really what I needed to be. Like you said, it's not the scientist part, it's the questions, it's the discovery.
Mm.
And so I do that now though, but in coaching, like as I'm coaching clients, I'm like, what is that about? Why'd you say that? Why did that make you cry? What,
You
what's
are
going on?
a scientist of the mind.
Yes, exactly. And
You
but
are a
also of
scientist
scripture.
and of
Like,
scripture.
when I read the Bible, like the way when I started doing that, and I started to take myself and just ask God the questions, like this morning I was reading something, and it said this verse said something weird, and I was like, what does that mean? And so I just like
Mm.
went on this whole, I could have been like, that's dumb, you're not supposed to do that, whatever. But I was like, no. And so I take it down this thing, and the insight and revelation that God gave me about it, I was like, that is really cool. Like, that is so, and I
Wow.
love reading the Bible, because every time there is something that God's going to speak to me that is like, I feel like I'm learning like deep treasures that I on my own clearly could not understand. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is just, it's like drawing me into God. So I feel like we all have stuff about us that, and I mean, I have a podcast, I talk, like I love talking, and I love the podcast, and it's helping people. And like you were saying, those little, like, I just love that, how, you declared something, you felt like God was saying it, and then people come and you're like, okay, that's the answer to
Yeah.
this. Like, yes to the podcast, yes to this lady with the workshop potentially. But I feel like God gives us, it's like when we're planting, not, I don't plant, I don't do gardening because I can't, I kill everything. But if I could, when you plant a seed, right, you
Yeah.
don't usually, in most plants, I mean, bamboo's different apparently, but usually there's a seed, and then before you get to like the part where it's ready to harvest, you still see growth, like,
Yeah.
it's coming. And I
Yeah.
just feel like that's such a gift from God, that we don't have to have like a barren field, and then it's like you just hope that at the end of this season that something's going to sprout up out of nowhere. But that you get to see it along the way, like that little bit of encouragement, like, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. So that's
Yes.
what I think of for those little like nods of
Those God
affirmation.
winks.
Mm-hmm.
Those God winks, he's so sweet. And so
Mm-hmm.
those God winks, I have to tell you, sometimes they mean more than the big things, because
Mm-hmm.
it's in those moments where you feel sort of the loneliest, and it's in the mundane, like we say, especially, when you're a mom, you have kids, you have all these, again, these day-to-day things that you have to do, where you feel like, did God really say this? Am I really going down the right path? So in these small little things is where it's almost like, I think a friend of mine said, and I think it was Moses, and you'll have to correct me, but he says that he had like the staff and he would in the staff put like notches of
Wow.
things. I don't know if it was Moses, but we'll look it up. We'll confirm. But
Mm-hmm.
he talks about, he would put like notches of like experiences. And my friend was giving me a word, and he was saying, you have to put notches and things in the staff that you have to remind you of the little things that
Mm-hmm.
God showed himself and said yes. When you're not doing well, you go back and you're like, wait a minute, God,
Yeah.
no, no, no. These little things you spoke, you did, you
Yeah.
said, and so it's more powerful, even the big stuff sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I've looked that up because I don't know who it is. But okay, so
Yeah.
as we wrap up here, where can people learn more about you, connect with you, learn more about the book, all that?
Awesome. So I have an Instagram account called Carol G Hacks. So it's sort of like my personal one, and it's about, me hacking life. And the evidence board is the ultimate life hack, right? And so I have the evidence board on Instagram as well. The book is on Amazon. So I have a paperback book, I have the workbook, ebook. Now I have an interactive book that you can like write
Mm-hmm.
on
Yeah.
Etsy. It's called this. So I have it here. It's called My Life Evidence Board. So this is
That's
the
really
book.
cool. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. And the workbook. And I designed this. I had
Oh, it's
a
so
lot, a
pretty.
lot of mistakes. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But it
But I'll
doesn't
put
matter.
links for
Yes,
I'll put links to
all
all
the
those in the
links.
description. Yeah. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. This has been such a good conversation. Yes, people are gonna I hope they will go buy the book because it's just so great. And the workbook together. That's such a great idea also to have the workbook. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you so much. And I just bless everything that you're doing. And if I can ever help, please let me know. I am a fan. I am a supporter. And I love it. And thank you so much for saying yes to me, and for you are an answer to a prayer as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Alexia.
Thanks for listening to the Mama with a Calling podcast. As always, you'll find the show notes for today's episode at mamawithacalling.com/podcast. Really quick before you head out, are you loving these episodes? To make sure this podcast gets in the ears of as many mamas as possible, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I'm going to be reading your reviews on the podcast, so I can't wait to hear from you. Also, if you know someone that needs to hear these episodes, grab a screenshot and share it on Instagram, and don't forget to tag me at Mama with a Calling so I can share it in my stories. Until next time, keep pursuing your calling.